Tonight is not ordinary, and this moment is not random. There are nights that pass quietly into memory, and then there are nights that are marked by heaven, nights written into your destiny long before you were aware of them. God says, tonight was marked as your turning point. This is not poetic language, and it is not exaggeration. This is a divine interruption, a moment where time itself pauses to wait for your response. You did not stumble into this message. You were led here, drawn here, summoned here, because something that has been delayed in your life has reached its final threshold. Heaven is speaking with urgency because what happens now determines what happens next. There are things when God whispers into a wait and see into a warn. This is one of those warning moments wrapped in mercy. The delay placed on your life did not begin tonight, but it can end tonight. And that is why this message carries weight. God is making it clear, if you ignore this message now, the delay placed on your life will become permanent. Not because He desires to withhold from you, but because divine windows do not remain open forever. Timing in the Spirit is as real as timing in the natural, and missed moments often feel like unanswered prayers when in truth, they were unrecognized opportunities. You may have felt it even before these words reached you. A restlessness in your spirit, a heaviness you could not explain, a sense that something was about to change, yet fear whispered that nothing ever does. The tension you feel is not confusion, it is confirmation. When God marks a turning point, He also marks the heart that stands at the center of it. Tonight carries urgency because God knows how close you are to either movement or stagnation. This is why the message is direct. This is why it says, open immediately. Delay is no longer neutral. Hesitation now has consequences. Understand this clearly. God is not threatening you. He is protecting you. Love warns before laws. Grace speaks before doors close. This message is not meant to frighten you. It is meant to awaken you. There is a difference between patience and postponement. You have been patient. You have waited. You have endured seasons where nothing seemed to move despite your prayers, your efforts, your faith. But patience was never meant to turn into paralysis. Tonight, God is drawing a line between waiting and ignoring, between obedience and delay. There are turning points that look dramatic and loud, and there are turning points that arrive quietly through a message, a word, a moment of recognition. This is the latter. Do not underestimate it. Some of the greatest shifts in Scripture happen when someone simply paid attention, when they listened, when they responded, when they moved at the sound of God's voice rather than waiting for comfort or certainty. Tonight is marked because heaven has already decided to move, but movement requires agreement. You may be wondering why this feels so serious, why the tone feels different from other messages you have heard. It is because this is not a general word. This is specific. This is targeted. This is not for everyone, but it is for someone who has been standing at the edge of breakthrough while unknowingly entertaining delay. God sees how close you are. He sees the progress you almost made, the doors you almost walked through, the answers that were almost released. And He is speaking now because almost is no longer enough. There are moments when God allows delay to build character, and there are moments when delay becomes a test of obedience. Tonight reveals which one this is. You are not being asked to do something complicated. You are being asked to respond, to acknowledge, to open your heart, your mind, your spirit, and say, I hear you. That response is not small. In the spiritual realm, it is decisive. It signals readiness. It signals trust. It signals alignment. This is why ignoring this message matters. Ignoring is not the same as disbelief. Ignoring is choosing comfort over conviction, familiarity over faith, routine over response. When God speaks and we choose not to engage, we teach our spirit to tolerate delay. And over time, tolerated delay hardens into permanence. Not because God leaves, but because the heart stops moving. Tonight is God's interruption of that pattern. You may feel unqualified. You may feel tired. You may feel unsure if you can trust again after waiting so long. God already knows this. That is why He marked tonight and not tomorrow. Tomorrow carries distractions. Tomorrow carries doubt. Tonight carries clarity. Tonight carries urgency. Tonight carries grace strong enough to move you past what has held you back. This message did not arrive to accuse you of waiting too long. It arrived to rescue you before waiting becomes your identity. Listen carefully. Turning points are rarely comfortable. They demand attention. They demand response. They demand courage in small but significant ways. Tonight is not about dramatic action. It is about inner alignment. It is about recognizing that God is speaking now, not later. That delay has had its season, and obedience now determines acceleration later. As this message opens, so does a door. You are standing in front of it. The weight you feel is not pressure from fear. It is the gravity of destiny calling your name. Heaven has marked this night. The question is not whether God is ready to move. The question is whether you are willing to respond. What makes this message even more powerful is the truth that the delay you've been living with was not something you created on your own. This is important for you to hear because many have silently blamed themselves for what has not moved. You replay decisions, conversations, missed chances, and moments you wish you could redo. But God says this delay was hidden, layered beneath circumstances, misunderstandings, resistance, and spiritual opposition you could not see at the time. You were not lazy. You were not careless. You were navigating forces beyond your awareness, and heaven hath been watching every step. There are delays that come from disobedience, but there are also delays that come from opposition. And when opposition cannot stop your destiny, it attempts to slow it. That is what you have been facing. Progress that should have been smooth felt heavy. Doors that should have opened easily resisted. Answers that should have come quickly seemed to linger just out of reach. You prayed, you stayed faithful, you kept showing up, yet something always fell off. That was not your imagination. It was resistance working quietly, hoping you would eventually accept delay as normal. God wants you to know that He has not miscounted your effort. He has not overlooked your endurance. Every prayer you whispered when you were tired still echoed in heaven. Every moment you chose hope instead of bitterness mattered. Even when you felt unseen, heaven was recording your faithfulness. Delay did not mean denial. It meant a battle was happening beyond what your eyes could see. And tonight, God is addressing that battle directly. This is where clarity replaces confusion. The reason this message feels personal is because it is correcting a narrative that has been forming in your mind. The enemy wanted you to believe that nothing was changing, that waiting was your permanent condition, that delay defined your future. But God says delay was temporary, purposeful, and now confrontational. It has reached its expiration date. What remained was your awareness of it. And awareness is powerful, because once something is exposed, it can no longer operate freely. You may notice that as you listen, something inside you is waking up. A quiet strength, a recognition, a sense of this explains so much. That is not coincidence. That is alignment. God does not reveal truth to overwhelm you. He reveals it to empower you. When you understand that delay was placed and not permanent, your posture changes. You stop shrinking your expectations. You stop preparing for disappointment. You begin to stand again. But here is where responsibility gently enters the room. Awareness creates a moment of choice. Once God reveals what was hidden, you are no longer responding blindly. You are responding knowingly. This is why engagement matters. This is why response matters. Faith is not passive agreement. It is active alignment. Heaven has spoken. Now your spirit must answer. This is also why community matters in moments like this. When you align yourself publicly with what God is doing privately, you strengthen your resolve. There is power in agreement, even in simple acts. If this message is speaking to you, take a moment right now to engage. Like this video as a sign that you receive this word. Share it with someone who may also be carrying silent delay. Comment with a word of agreement so your voice joins the moment. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to this channel so you remain connected to what God continues to release. These are not just digital actions. They are spiritual signals of alignment and expectancy. Returning to the message, understand this. Hidden delays often create hidden wounds. You learned how to cope. You learned how to adjust expectations. You learned how to survive instead of anticipate. God is not judging that. He's healing it. Tonight is not only about removing delay. It is about restoring your ability to believe without guarding your heart against disappointment. That is why this message goes deeper than surface-level encouragement. It is recalibrating your inner posture. You were never meant to live braced for frustration. You were meant to live positioned for movement. And while the delay shaped you, it does not get to define you. God allowed you to grow in endurance, but He never intended endurance to replace fulfillment. There comes a moment when what strengthened you must step aside for what will release you. Tonight marks that shift. There is also something else you need to understand. Delays often distort timing in our minds. We start believing that later is safer than now. We tell ourselves we'll respond when things are clearer, calmer, more stable. But God often moves before conditions feel ideal. That is why obedience is about trust, not comfort. Tonight is asking you to reframe urgency not as pressure but as invitation. An invitation to step out of waiting and into response. As this part closes, let this truth settle into you. You were not forgotten. You were not behind schedule, and you were not disqualified. The delay did not cancel your calling. It refined your awareness. And now that awareness is calling you forward, something has shifted simply because you are listening. Something is loosening because you are engaging. And something is about to move because heaven has decided that delay has lasted long enough. There are moments when heaven does not slowly unfold a plan but decisively steps in. This is one of those moments. God says the reason tonight feels different is because a decision was made in the unseen realm before you ever became aware of it. Divine intervention is rarely announced in advance. It arrives suddenly, interrupts patterns, and demands attention. Tonight is not about gradual improvement. It is about interruption. God intervenes when delay has served its purpose and begins to threaten destiny. That is why this moment carries urgency and weight. Intervention happens when heaven steps between what is and what should be. You have been standing in that gap longer than you realize. Every prayer you offered, every tear you shed, every question you asked contributed to this moment. But intervention is not triggered by volume. It is triggered by timing. God moves when the conditions are aligned not just around you, but within you. Tonight signals that alignment has been reached. Something in your spirit is now ready to respond where before it was still healing, learning, or waiting. You may have noticed that when divine intervention begins, clarity arrives before change. God often reveals the truth of a situation before he alters it. That is what is happening now. He is showing you that tonight is not merely another message, another word, another moment of inspiration. It is a signal flare, a line drawn in time. Intervention requires recognition. If you miss the meaning of the moment, you miss the movement that follows it. In Scripture, divine intervention often came when people least expected it. A voice in the night, a burning bush, a sudden knock, a word spoken at the exact moment of exhaustion. God interrupts patterns because patterns can become prisons. You were not meant to normalize delay. You were meant to outgrow it. Intervention breaks cycles that effort alone cannot. That is why God steps in personally when human strength reaches its limit. Tonight carries a spiritual signal, and that signal is this: God is inviting your obedience to meet his action. Heaven has already leaned in. The atmosphere has shifted, but intervention does not override free will. It waits for response. That response does not have to be loud or dramatic. It can be as simple as internal agreement, a quiet yes, a willingness to listen differently than before. But it must be real. This is where many turning points are lost, not through rebellion but through distraction. People hear the message but treat it casually. They acknowledge the moment but do not honor it. They assume they will have another chance later. God is loving, but timing is precise. When intervention arrives, delay becomes dangerous. That is why this message is direct. God is not asking you to understand everything. He is asking you to respond to what you understand now. Something shifts when divine intervention meets human obedience. Resistance weakens. Confusion lifts. Momentum begins to form. You may not see the full picture yet, but you will feel a change in your posture. Where you once hesitated, you begin to lean forward. Where fear once whispered, peace begins to speak louder. That is the early evidence of intervention at work. God is also addressing something deeper tonight: your relationship with timing. Delay taught you to brace yourself. Intervention teaches you to move again. A transition can feel uncomfortable. You may feel exposed without the familiar shield of waiting. But that discomfort is not danger. It is adjustment. You are adjusting to movement after stillness, to expectation after endurance, to hope without reservation. Do not underestimate the spiritual authority of this moment. When God intervenes, he does so with intention. Nothing about tonight is accidental. The time you are hearing this, the state of your heart, the weariness you carry, the hope you still protect, God accounted for all of it. Intervention is personal. It meets you where you are, not where you pretend to be. This is also why the enemy resists moments like this so fiercely. Intervention threatens established delay. It disrupts comfort zones built around waiting. It awakens people who had grown used to surviving. That is why doubt often whispers loudest right before breakthrough. But doubt does not cancel intervention unless it is given authority through inaction. As you listen now, something is being asked of you, not effort, not perfection, but attention. Attention utters into. Attention keeps you present. Attention allows the next instruction to land clearly. You are not being rushed. You are being awakened. And awakening is always urgent because sleep is comfortable. Let this moment settle into your spirit. Tonight is different. Not because your circumstances have already changed, but because heaven has decided they no longer have the final word. You are standing in the space where divine decision meets human response. What comes next depends on whether you recognize the weight of now. Before this part closes, receive this blessing with intention. Type "I am ready" in the comments if this message resonates with you. Blessing code 814 is now activated. Let it be a marker of agreement, a signal that you recognize this intervention and choose to respond. And hold on, what comes next changes everything. As this intervention unfolds, hear this clearly. When you support this channel, you are not supporting a voice. You are helping God reach hearts standing at their own turning points. Every seed you sow becomes light poured into someone else's midnight. The Lord says, as you release, I release. As you water, I pour rivers back upon you. I feel led to invite you personally into this moment. Your obedience here carries impact beyond what you can see. This is not a donation. It is a prophetic response. Heaven honors those who move when the window is open. Blessing is released over every giver, every supporter, every obedient heart. Give now through Super Thanks, membership, or PayPal. The link is in the description and the QR code is flashing. Do it now. What happens if this message is ignored is not something God speaks lightly about, and it is not meant to instill fear. It is meant to reveal reality. Ignoring a divine warning does not immediately result in chaos or punishment. Instead, it produces something far more subtle and far more dangerous, spiritual stagnation that feels normal. When God speaks at a turning point and the message is dismissed, the moment does not argue back. It simply passes. And what was once a temporary delay begins to settle into something that feels permanent, not because God withdrew his hand, but because the heart stopped responding to his voice. Here is a pattern that repeats throughout spiritual history. God sends a word, a sign, a moment of clarity. The word carries urgency because the season requires response. When that response does not come, the opportunity does not always announce its departure. It fades quietly. People then assume that nothing was ever meant to change. They interpret silence as God's will, when in truth it was the result of a missed window. This is why God warns before silence. Silence is not always peace. Sometimes it is distance created by delay. Ignoring does not mean outright rejection. Many people ignore divine messages by postponing action. They say, I'll think about it. I'll respond later. Where this doesn't apply to me right now. That kind of delay feels harmless, even wise. But spiritual timing does not operate on comfort. It operates on alignment. When alignment is offered and not accepted, misalignment slowly takes its place. Over time, the heart grows accustomed to waiting without expectation. That is when delay becomes permanent. Permanent delay does not look dramatic. It looks like cycles repeating. It looks like prayers that sound the same year after year. It looks like potential never quite reaching expression. It looks like always being close, but never arriving. And the most painful part is that people in this place often believe they are being patient, when in reality they have become resigned. God is warning you now because he does not want resignation to become your resting place. This is why the message says the delay placed on your life will become permanent if ignored. The placement of delay was not eternal. It had boundaries. It had limits. It was allowed, not assigned forever. But once the season for removal arrives, response becomes necessary. If the removal is resisted, the delay no longer remains an external force. It becomes an internal posture. And internalized delay is far harder to break. God is revealing this not to condemn you, but to protect you from something you may not even realize is forming. When people stop expecting movement, they stop preparing for it. When they stop preparing, they stop noticing opportunity. And when opportunity passes unnoticed, delay reinforces itself. That is how spiritual stagnation develops, not through rebellion, but through gradual disengagement. You may ask, Why would God allow delay to become permanent? The answer is that God honors human choice. He does not force movement on a heart that refuses to engage. He invites, warns, and confirms, but he does not override will. Permanent delay is not something God desires. It is something that results when invitations are consistently declined. Love does not manipulate. Love respects response. There is also a deeper mercy hidden in this warning. God is exposing the consequences of ignoring now so you do not have to experience them later. He is giving you sight before loss. He is naming the danger before it becomes your reality. This is not about punishment. It is about preservation. The fact that you are hearing this means the delay is not yet hardened. There is still responsiveness in your spirit. There is still movement possible. Ignoring this message would not mean God stops loving you. It would mean that the season of acceleration would close, and life would continue at the pace of endurance rather than movement. You would survive but not advance. You would manage but not multiply. And over time, that quiet disappointment would begin to shape how you see yourself, God, and your future. God is warning you because he does not want your faith to shrink to fit delay. There are moments when obedience feels inconvenient, but disobedience feels safe. Ignoring feels safer than responding because responding requires vulnerability. It requires hope. It requires the risk of believing again. But safety is not the same as security. Delay feels safe because it is familiar. But familiarity is not always protection. It is often a limitation. God is speaking firmly now because firmness is kindness when the stakes are high. He is saying, do not miss this. Not because he will abandon you, but because he wants to advance you. Not because he is angry, but because he sees further than you do. Permanent delay is not a curse. It is a consequence of disengagement. And consequences can be avoided when warnings are heeded. As this part closes, let this truth settle deeply. Ignoring this message does not keep things the same. It shifts things slowly in a wrong direction. The response, even when imperfect, keeps the heart alive, alert, and aligned. God is calling you out of survival and into movement. The warning is real because the promise is real. And tonight, the choice still belongs to you. Even after all you have endured, there is a truth that may surprise you. The door you thought was closed never fully shut. God preserved it quietly, deliberately, and patiently, even while delay surrounded you. This is not because time stood still, but because mercy stood guard. While you were questioning whether opportunities had passed, heaven was protecting access you didn't even know still existed. That is the nature of God's grace. It works silently while we assume nothing is happening. Many people believe that delay always means loss, but that is not always true. Sometimes delay means preservation. God will allow time to stretch not to deny you, but to prepare you and to keep the door intact until the right moment arrives. The enemy wanted you to believe that what you missed was gone forever. God allowed you to believe it was closed so you would stop trying to force it open on your own. What you could not open with effort, God preserved with grace. This door remained open because your calling did not expire. Your assignment did not time out. Your purpose was not invalidated by waiting. Even when you felt disqualified, heaven never withdrew its investment in you. God does not abandon what he initiates. He may delay revelation, but he does not revoke intention. The door stayed open because it was never dependent on your strength. It was anchored in his promise. You must understand how rare this is. Many doors close permanently when ignored, but some are guarded by mercy because of covenant. This door is one of those. God saw your heart even when your faith was tired. He saw your desire to obey even when confusion clouded your discernment. He saw your willingness even when fear slowed your steps. And because he saw that, he intervened quietly to keep the door from sealing shut. The reason you are hearing is because the season of preservation is transitioning into the season of access. God does not preserve doors indefinitely without intention. Preservation is always temporary. It is a holding pattern, not a destination. And now, that holding pattern is ending. The door that remained untouched during delay is now being presented again, not as a reminder of what you missed, but as an invitation to what still remains. This is where perspective shifts. What you thought was a missed opportunity was actually delayed alignment. What you assumed was lost momentum was actually restrained movement. God was protecting you from entering too early, too wounded, or too uncertain. Had the door opened before, you might have walked through it without the strength to stay. Delay was not denial, it was divine pacing. There is also something deeply personal about this preserved door. It represents not just opportunity, but trust. God trusted that you would eventually hear him clearly. He trusted that you would grow in discernment. He trusted that you would mature through waiting rather than abandon your faith. That trust is being honored now. God does not represent doors to mock us. He does it to restore what was nearly lost. You may feel unprepared to approach this door again. That feeling is normal. Time changes perspective. You are not the same person you were when you first sensed this opportunity. You are wiser, more grounded, more aware. God accounted for that growth. The door did not remain open so you could rush. It remained open so you could return with clarity. This time, you are not entering blindly. You are entering informed, anchored, and aligned. The enemy thrives on finality. He wants you to believe that every delay equals a dead end. But God specializes in preserved endings and revived beginnings. The door still open is proof that your story was not meant to end where you thought it did. God preserved it not because you were perfect, but because his plan was persistent. This is also why the weight of this moment feels different. You are not standing before a new door. You are standing before a familiar one that you thought you had lost. That familiarity can stir regret, but God is not reopening this door to remind you of failure. He's reopening it to demonstrate mercy. What matters now is not how long it was delayed, but how you respond now that you see it clearly. As you stand before this preserved door, understand this: it will not remain open without response. Preservation has fulfilled its role. Access now requires movement. God has done what only he could do: keep it open. Now he invites you to do what only you can do: step forward in trust. The door is still there, not to pressure you, but to prove that delay did not win. Let this truth settle into your spirit. What you feared was forever was held in place by grace. What you mourned as lost was merely waiting. And what you assumed was closed is now standing before you again, quietly but firmly, asking the same question it always did: will you enter now? There is a reason this turning point feels heavier than you expected, and it is important that you understand it clearly. The weight you feel is not condemnation, and it is not fear. It is significance. When God draws near to shift something deeply rooted, the atmosphere changes. Spiritual weight increases not to crush you, but to focus you. Light moments do not usually alter destiny. Heavy moments do. This is one of them. Many people mistake spiritual weight for pressure from the enemy, but they are not the same. Pressure creates panic and confusion. Divine weight creates clarity and seriousness. Pressure drains you. Divine weight anchors you. What you are sensing now is not meant to push you away, it is meant to pull you into alignment. God is dealing with something foundational, not superficial. That is why this moment feels intense. The reason urgency feels uncomfortable is because it confronts familiarity. You became familiar with waiting, familiar with managing disappointment, familiar with carrying hope carefully so it would not hurt you again. That familiarity formed a kind of emotional shelter. But shelters are not homes. God is asking you to step out of what protected you and into what will move you. The transition always feels heavy because it requires release. Spiritual weight often shows up when God is about to lift something significant. Think of it this way: before something heavy is removed, its presence becomes more noticeable. You feel its full weight right before it is lifted. That is what is happening now. The delay you carried quietly is being exposed, not to shame you, but so it can be removed properly. You cannot release what you refuse to acknowledge. This is also why your emotions may feel closer to the surface than usual. You may feel reflective, sensitive, or deeply aware of time. You may think about years that passed, opportunities that almost happened, prayers that seemed unanswered. This is not regression. This is processing. God is allowing you to feel the weight so you do not carry it forward. Healing often begins with awareness, not relief. Another reason this turning point feels heavy is because responsibility is returning to your hands. Delay numbs expectation. Urgency awakens responsibility. When God moves, He invites participation. That invitation carries weight because it restores agency. You are no longer waiting for something to happen to you. You are being invited to move with God. That shift can feel daunting, especially after a long season of endurance. Do not confuse heaviness with danger. Danger makes you want to retreat. Divine weight makes you want to be still and listen. If you feel drawn inward rather than pushed away, that is confirmation that this weight is from God. He is slowing you down internally so you can move forward correctly. Rush obedience is not the goal. Attentive obedience is. There is also a cost associated with turning points that we do not always talk about. Movement requires leaving something behind. Delay became part of your identity in ways you may not realize. It shaped how you prayed, how you planned, how you guarded your heart. Releasing delay means releasing coping mechanisms that once served you. That release can feel like loss even when it is healthy. God honors that grief, but He does not let it stop you. You may be tempted to interpret this weight as a sign that you are not ready. The opposite is true. The weight is evidence that you are ready. Readiness does not always feel light. You often feel sober. It feels like standing at the edge of something that matters. God does not place weight on moments that do not carry consequence. He is marking this one because it matters deeply. It is also important to recognize that urgency does not mean haste. God is not rushing you. He is prioritizing this moment. Urgency simply means this moment has a shelf life. It must be honored while it is present. Ignoring urgency leads back to delay. Honoring urgency leads to peace, even if the next steps are still unfolding. As you sit with this heaviness, allow it to refine you rather than scare you. Let it quiet distractions. Let it sharpen your listening. Let it deepen your resolve. God is not asking you to figure everything out tonight. He is asking you to acknowledge that this moment is weighty because it is meaningful. You are not being overwhelmed. You are being positioned. When this part ends, do not rush to shake off what you feel. Sit with it. Let it do its work. The weight will not stay forever. Once alignment is established, weight gives way to momentum. But momentum built on avoidance collapses quickly. Momentum built on awareness lasts. This turning point feels heavy because it carries consequence, responsibility, and promise all at once. God trusts you with this moment. He would not place this weight on you if you were not strong enough to carry it briefly and wise enough to release it properly. The heaviness you feel is not a burden. It is a sign that what comes next is real. Tonight, everything narrows down to one word that carries more power than effort, more weight than intention, and more authority than emotion. That word is obedience. Not delayed obedience. Not partial obedience. Not obedience filtered through fear or comfort. But simple, immediate obedience. This is the key God is placing in your hand right now. It may not look impressive, but it unlocks what strength, strategy, and patience could not. Obedience is often misunderstood. Many people think it requires grand actions or dramatic sacrifices. But most turning points are unlocked by quiet, internal decisions that only heaven sees. Obedience begins when you choose to agree with God even when you do not yet see the outcome. It is the decision to move because He spoke, not because you feel ready. Tonight, God is not asking you to leap blindly. He is asking you to step honestly. Partial obedience has been one of the subtle causes of delay in many lives. Not rebellion, not refusal, but hesitation. Saying yes in the heart while delaying with the hands. Agreeing internally while postponing externally. Partial obedience soothes the conscience but does not move destiny. It creates the illusion of faith while maintaining the comfort of delay. God is addressing this gently, but firmly now because partial obedience keeps doors cracked instead of opened. Immediate obedience is powerful because it interrupts the cycle of overthinking. Overthinking feels responsible, but it often masks fear. You analyze, wait, reevaluate, and wait again, telling yourself you are being wise. But wisdom also knows when to move. God speaks clearly where He expects response. The clarity you feel now is not meant to be stored for later. It is meant to be acted upon while it is present. Obedience tonight does not mean you must have every answer. It means you trust the one who does. It means you stop negotiating with timing. It means you resist the urge to delay response until conditions feel safer. Faith that waits for certainty is not faith, it is control. Obedience releases control and places trust back where it belongs. Here's a reason obedience feels risky after long delay. Delay teaches caution. It teaches restraint. It teaches you to protect yourself from disappointment. Obedience asks you to believe again. It can feel vulnerable. But vulnerability is not weakness. It is openness. And openness is required for movement. God cannot move through a heart that is closed for protection. You may be wondering what obedience looks like in practical terms. It may be a decision you have been avoiding, a conversation you have delayed, a step you sensed God prompting you toward but kept postponing. Obedience is rarely abstract. It is usually specific. God often confirms obedience through repetition. If something keeps returning to your spirit, it is likely because obedience is waiting there. This is also why obedience must be immediate. Delay dulls clarity. The longer you wait, the more voices join the conversation. Fear speaks. Logic argues. Comfort negotiates. But in the moment God speaks, His voice is clearest. Immediate obedience honors that clarity. It says, I trust you enough to move before doubt has time to settle. Obedience is also the bridge between preserved opportunity and accessed opportunity. The door God kept open will not open wider on its own. It responds to obedience. When you move, heaven moves with you. When you hesitate, momentum pauses. God does not punish hesitation, but He cannot accelerate through it. Acceleration requires agreement. Understand this. Obedience does not guarantee ease, but it guarantees alignment. and alignment produces peace even when circumstances are still adjusting. Peace is not the absence of challenge, it is the presence of assurance. Obedience restores assurance. It quiets the inner conflict created by delay. It brings coherence back to your spiritual life. There is also restoration attached to obedience. When you obey now, God redeems not just the future, but the past. He restores confidence that was eroded by waiting. He rebuilds trust that was weakened by disappointment. Obedience realigns your identity from the one who waits to the one who responds. That shift is profound. Do not underestimate the simplicity of what God is asking. He is not demanding perfection. He is asking for willingness. A willing heart moves faster than a prepared mind. Preparation can come later. Obedience must come now. God equips those who move, not those who wait for full readiness. As this part closes, hear this clearly. Obedience is not about proving faith to God. It is about positioning yourself to receive what He has already prepared. Tonight is not testing your worthiness. It is inviting your response. The key is in your hand. The door is in front of you. The moment is now. And obedience is the step that turns potential into movement. The moment you respond, something shifts, often before you see it, and sometimes before you feel it. This is how spiritual acceleration works. God does not always announce the change with visible signs. Instead, He alters the atmosphere first. What once felt resistant begins to feel fluid. What once took effort begins to move with grace. The shift after obedience is real, even when it is quiet. Heaven responds immediately when alignment is restored. One of the first things that breaks after obedience is internal resistance. That constant tension you carried, the push and pull between hope and disappointment, begins to loosen. You may notice a strange calm settling in, not because everything is resolved, but because something has been decided. Decision is powerful. Indecision, prolonged delay. Decision activates movement. The moment you choose to respond, you step out of stagnation and into flow. Chains of delay often fall silently. They do not always announce their departure with emotion or excitement. Sometimes you only realize they are gone when you notice how easily you are breathing again, how clearly you are thinking, how naturally you are expecting good instead of bracing for disappointment. That is not imagination. That is the evidence of spiritual release. What held you no longer has authority once obedience is chosen. Acceleration does not mean chaos. It means alignment. When God accelerates something, He does so with order. Things begin to line up. Conversations happen at the right time. Opportunities appear without strain. Favor replaces friction. You may be surprised at how natural it feels once movement begins. Delay makes progress feel foreign, but progress is your original design. It is important to understand that acceleration is not about speed alone. It is about direction. God does not rush you forward aimlessly. He guides you deliberately. The shift after response brings clarity. You may suddenly know what to say yes to and what to release. Discernment sharpens. Confusion fades. This is because obedience clears spiritual noise. When the heart aligns, the mind follows. You may also notice resistance attempting to reassert itself after you respond. This is not failure, it is confirmation. When delay loses its grip, it tries to negotiate. Old thoughts return. Old fears resurface. Doubt whispers, nothing has changed. But this is the final echo of a defeated pattern. Do not mistake noise for authority. The shift has already happened. You do not need to fight, only remain aligned. Another sign of acceleration is restored expectancy. You begin to look forward again, not with anxiety, but with anticipation. You stop counting losses and start noticing possibilities. This is a sacred change. Expectancy fuels faith. Faith sustains movement. God restores expectancy because He knows it was damaged by waiting. He does not shame you for protecting your heart. He heals it so you can trust again. Acceleration also reveals itself through timing. Things that were once delayed suddenly feel urgent in a healthy way. Not pressured, but purposeful. You sense when to act and when to wait. You no longer feel stuck in between. But balance is a gift. It shows that your spirit is back in rhythm with heaven's pace. Rhythm matters more than speed. There is also relational shift that often follows obedience. Support appears. Encouragement finds you. People speak words that confirm what God has already said. This is not coincidence. God often uses others to reinforce what He has initiated. Pay attention to confirmations. They are not meant to replace faith, but to strengthen it. Do not expect acceleration to look the same for everyone. God customizes movement according to calling. For some, acceleration looks like rapid external change. For others, it looks like deep internal alignment that prepares the way for future movement. Both are valid. Both are powerful. What matters is that delay no longer defines the pace. As acceleration begins, guard your alignment. Stay attentive. Stay responsive. Do not return to old patterns of hesitation. Momentum is sustained through continued obedience, not constant effort. You do not have to force what God is moving. You simply have to stay willing. This is also a moment of gratitude. Gratitude anchors acceleration. When you acknowledge what God has done, even before you see the full outcome, you honor the shift. Gratitude keeps the heart open and receptive. It prevents fear from reclaiming ground that has already been released. Before this part closes, receive this blessing with intention. Type "I receive the shift" in the comments if this speaks to your spirit. Blessing code 932 is now activated. Let it mark the moment you recognized movement and agreed with heaven. And remember this: what you are stepping into now was prepared while you were waiting. You'll be glad you stayed for what's about to be revealed. As this shift unfolds, I am speaking directly to those who feel the pull to act now. When you give, you are not funding content. You are releasing light into lives standing at the edge of their own breakthrough. The Lord says, "Those who sow into my work will never lack my supply." I feel this invitation personally for you. Your response here carries spiritual weight. This is a prophetic moment, not a pause. Blessing is spoken over every seed released in obedience. Support now through Super Thanks, channel membership, or PayPal. The link is in the description and the QR code is on screen. Move now. After a turning point, the battle often changes shape. What once resisted you openly now tries to distract you quietly. This is why guarding the breakthrough after response is just as important as responding in the first place. Many people experience initial movement, feel relief, and then relax their spiritual posture. But momentum is not maintained by celebration alone. It is protected by awareness. God is not warning you of danger. He is equipping you with wisdom so what has begun does not fade. The enemy rarely attacks head-on after obedience. Instead, he attempts subtle erosion. He introduces small doubts, mild discouragements, and familiar thought patterns that whisper, "Maybe this was just emotional," or "nothing has really changed." These thoughts are not random. They are designed to pull you back into the mindset of delay. That is why guarding your breakthrough begins in the mind. You must learn to recognize old voices and refuse to give them authority. Breakthrough does not mean the absence of challenges. It means challenges no longer control direction. After a shift, resistance often tests consistency. Will you continue to believe when the excitement settles? Will you continue to move when progress becomes practical rather than emotional? This is where many people lose ground, not because God withdraws, but because focus drifts. Focus is the currency of momentum. One of the most important things you can do after a turning point is stay spiritually alert without becoming anxious. Alertness is not fear-based. It is intentional. It means you remain aware of your inner state. When peace begins to slip, you pause and realign. When doubt tries to settle, you confront it with truth. Guarding your breakthrough is about maintenance, not defense. You are not fighting for victory. You are stewarding it. Another way breakthroughs are compromised is through isolation. After God moves, some people retreat inward, thinking they need to protect the moment privately. While solitude has its place, isolation weakens resolve. God often sustains breakthroughs through community, reminders, and shared testimony. This is why staying connected matters. When you surround yourself with alignment, you reinforce movement. This is also why testimony is powerful. Speaking what God has done, even before you see the full outcome, solidifies faith. Testimony reminds your spirit of truth when circumstances fluctuate. Do not underestimate the power of your own words. What you speak shapes what you expect. What you expect influences what you notice. Guard your breakthrough by guarding your language. Routine can also either protect or erode momentum. After delay, routine often forms around survival. After breakthrough, routine must be restructured around growth. This does not mean overloading yourself. It means being intentional. Small, consistent actions aligned with obedience sustain what big moments initiate. Breakthrough is a door, not a destination. There is also a temptation to rush ahead after movement begins. Acceleration can create excitement, and excitement can lead to impatience. Guarding your breakthrough means respecting pace. God accelerates wisely. He does not skip steps that build stability. Trust His rhythm. Rushing can damage what patience preserves. Stay responsive, not reactive. You may notice that after the shift, clarity comes in layers. God reveals next steps gradually, not all at once. This keeps you dependent, attentive, and grounded. Guarding your breakthrough means resisting the urge to demand the full plan. Obedience remains daily, not one time. Each yes strengthens the path forward. This is also a moment to anchor yourself in gratitude. Gratitude is a powerful stabilizer. It keeps your heart soft and your perspective aligned. When you thank God for what He has done and what He is doing, you reinforce trust. Gratitude prevents entitlement and discouragement from taking root. If this message is helping you guard what God is doing in your life, take a moment to engage. Like this video as a sign that you are committed to stewarding this breakthrough. Share it with someone who may be standing at the edge of their own turning point. Comment with what you are believing God for. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel so you remain connected to words that strengthen your alignment. These actions are not casual. They reinforce intention and consistency. As this part comes to a close, remember this: breakthroughs are protected not by force, but by focus. Stay aware. Stay grateful. Stay connected. Do not return to old patterns of thinking simply because they are familiar. Familiarity does not equal safety. Alignment does. What you are stepping into now requires attentiveness, not anxiety. God is with you in this season. He did not bring you this far to let momentum slip quietly away. Guard what He has given you, not with fear, but with faith. And hold this in your heart as we move forward. What is coming next builds on everything you have just received, and you will want to hear it. One of the most misunderstood aspects of divine movement is how God deals with time. When delay lifts, many expect God to simply resume where things left off. But God does something far more profound. He restores time, not by erasing the past, but by redeeming it. What felt wasted, lost, or unproductive is never beyond His reach. God does not merely compensate, He recalibrates. He takes what was delayed and infuses it with purpose, so the future carries the weight of restoration, not regret. Restored time does not mean you relive old seasons. It means you recover what those seasons took from you. Confidence, expectation, joy, vision. God is intentional about this because delay often steals more than opportunity. It steals belief. When waiting stretches too long, people stop dreaming freely. They plan cautiously. They hope quietly. God restores time by restoring boldness. He teaches your spirit how to anticipate again without fear. Scripture shows us that God is not bound by linear progression. He can compress years into moments and stretch moments into legacy. When He redeems time, He accelerates growth without bypassing maturity. You may notice that after this turning point, things begin to move faster than before, yet with greater stability. That is not coincidence. God is compensating for what was held back while ensuring nothing collapses under speed. Restoration of time also shows up in clarity. You may suddenly understand lessons that once felt confusing. Painful seasons begin to make sense, not because they were good, but because they were not wasted. God reveals how He used delay to shape discernment, deepen compassion, and strengthen resilience. This understanding does not glorify the pain. It redeems it. It gives meaning where there once was only endurance. Another way God restores time is through alignment. When delay lifts, relationships, resources, and opportunities begin to align more efficiently. You find yourself in the right place at the right time more often. Conversations open doors that once felt inaccessible. These are not shortcuts, they are corrections. God is adjusting trajectory so you arrive where you were always meant to be, without unnecessary detours. It is important to understand that restored time does not always look like getting back exactly what you lost. Sometimes it looks like receiving something greater, more fitting, or more sustainable. But it does not always replace what was delayed. He often upgrades it. What you receive after restoration is usually better suited to who you have become. Delay matured you. Restoration honors that maturity. There may still be moments when you grieve the years that felt heavy or slow. God does not dismiss that grief. He meets it with assurance. He did not say those years didn't matter. He says, they mattered more than you know. Restored time does not deny loss, it transforms it. It shifts your focus from what could have been to what can still be, with greater depth and purpose. You may also notice that restored time carries a sense of urgency paired with peace. You feel motivated, but not frantic. Focused, but not pressured. This is a sign of divine pacing. God restores time by teaching you how to move wisely, not hurriedly. You no longer feel like you are behind. You feel like you are exactly where you need to be. There is also a spiritual confidence that accompanies restored time. You stop measuring yourself against others. Comparison loses its grip. You recognize that your journey was unique, and so is your timing. God restores dignity along with opportunity. He reminds you that delay did not diminish your value or credibility. Your story carries weight because of what you endured, not despite it. As restoration unfolds, you may be surprised by how naturally things begin to fit. What once felt forced now flows. What once required constant effort now responds to simple obedience. This ease is not laziness, it is alignment. God is not making things effortless, He is making them purposeful. Purpose reduces friction. Let this truth anchor you. God is not trying to make up for lost time in a frantic way. He is redeeming it intentionally. He is weaving past, present, and future into a story that makes sense from heaven's perspective. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not catching up. You are moving forward with restored momentum. As this part closes, allow hope to rise without restraint. The years you thought were gone are being honored. The prayers you thought expired are being revisited. The dreams you stored away are being reawakened. God restores time not to remind you of what you missed, but to show you how faithful He has always been. What comes next will carry the fullness of what once felt delayed, and it will arrive with purpose, peace, and power. After a night like this, many people ask the same quiet question: how will I know this was real? God understands that question, and He does not leave His children without confirmation. When a turning point truly occurs, it leaves traces, not always dramatic signs, but consistent indicators that something has shifted beneath the surface. These confirmations are not meant to replace faith. They are meant to strengthen it. God knows how fragile hope can feel after long delay, so He offers reassurance in ways your spirit can recognize. One of the first confirmations you may notice is internal peace. This peace does not come because everything is resolved, but because something has settled. The inner tension that once dominated your thoughts begins to loosen. You may still have questions, but they no longer carry panic. You may still be waiting on outcomes, but the waiting feels different. This peace is not denial, it is alignment. It signals that your spirit is no longer fighting the direction God is leading you. Another sign is clarity replacing confusion. You begin to see what matters and what does not with sharper focus. Decisions that once felt overwhelming become simpler. Distractions lose their appeal. You are not suddenly perfect or fearless, but you are more decisive. This clarity is a confirmation that delay is no longer clouding your discernment. When God lifts delay, He often restores vision. You may also notice subtle but meaningful external shifts. Conversations open unexpectedly. Information arrives at the right time. Opportunities surface without strain. These moments may seem small on their own, but together they form a pattern. God confirms His word through alignment. When multiple things begin pointing in the same direction, pay attention. Confirmation often whispers before it speaks loudly. Another powerful sign is renewed courage. This does not always look like bold action right away. Sometimes it looks like quiet willingness. You find yourself considering steps you once dismissed as unrealistic or too risky. Fear no longer has the final say. Courage begins to replace caution. This does not mean you act recklessly. It means you are no longer frozen by what if. Courage is the fruit of restored trust. Pay attention also to resistance. This may seem strange, but renewed resistance can be confirmation. When God moves, opposition often reacts. Old doubts may try to resurface. Familiar distractions may return. This does not mean the shift failed. It means it mattered. The key difference now is that resistance no longer feels dominant. You recognize it for what it is and refuse to partner with it. Discernment itself is a confirmation. Another sign many people experience is a change in prayer. Your prayers become more focused. less repetitive, more intentional. You stop praying from desperation and begin praying from expectancy. Your words carry confidence rather than pleading. This shift happens naturally when delay lifts. Prayer becomes conversation again instead of survival. You may also feel drawn toward areas of your life that were neglected during waiting. Organization, discipline, and structure begin to feel necessary rather than burdensome. This is not pressure, it is preparation. God often prompts practical alignment after spiritual movement. These urges are confirmations that you are stepping into a season that requires readiness. Do not overlook joy. It may return quietly at first. A sense of lightness, moments of gratitude without obvious cause, laughter that feels genuine. Joy is not always loud, but it is unmistakable. It is one of heaven's clearest signatures. Joy confirms that your spirit recognizes movement even before circumstances catch up. Another confirmation is how you interpret setbacks. Challenges may still arise, but they no longer derail you. You recover faster. You adapt instead of retreating. Setbacks feel temporary rather than defining. This resilience is evidence that delay no longer frames your expectations. You have shifted from endurance to momentum. God may also confirm this turning point through repeated reminders. Similar messages, scriptures, or themes may surface in different places. This repetition is not coincidence. God often confirms direction through consistency. When the same truth meets you from multiple angles, it is meant to anchor you. It is important to remember that confirmation unfolds over time. Not every sign appears at once. God confirms progressively so you learn to trust the process, not just the moment. Do not rush to evaluate everything immediately. Stay attentive. Stay grounded. Confirmation grows clearer as alignment deepens. As this part closes, hold this assurance close. God is not silent after He speaks. He watches over His word to perform it. You are not expected to manufacture belief. You are invited to notice evidence. Peace, clarity, courage, alignment, joy, resilience. These are not random experiences. They are confirmations that something real has begun. The night was not just emotional. It was intentional. And as you move forward, God will continue to remind you that delay no longer has the final word. What He started, He will confirm. What He confirm, He will complete. As this message comes to its close, it is important to return to the heart of what God has been saying from the beginning. Tonight was marked. Not emotionally marked, not symbolically marked, but divinely marked. Long before you pressed play, heaven already knew this moment would find you. God does not speak casually at turning points. He speaks with intention, precision, and care. Everything you have heard was not meant to overwhelm you, but to anchor you in truth. Your life is not stalled, forgotten, or abandoned. It is being redirected with purpose. This was never about fear or threat. It was about urgency wrapped in love. God warned because He wanted to preserve what still belongs to you. Delay had an assignment, but it did not have authority to stay forever. Tonight marked the moment where waiting stopped being protective and started becoming restrictive. God stepped in not to pressure you, but to invite you forward. And invitation is always an act of grace. You may still feel a mix of emotions as this ends. Relief, sobriety, hope, even a quiet trembling. That is normal. Turning points do not always feel triumphant in the moment. Often, they feel still, weighty, and deeply personal. God is not asking you to feel strong. He is reminding you that you are not alone. Strength grows as obedience continues, not before it begins. Let this assurance settle into you. God is not disappointed in you. He is attentive to you. He is not measuring how long you waited. He is honoring that you are responding now. Heaven does not shame delayed people, it rescues them. And tonight was rescue, not rebuke. Everything God spoke was designed to lift you out of survival and into alignment. As you move forward from this moment, do not expect perfection. Expect guidance. Do not expect instant completion. Expect steady movement. God walks with those who respond, not those who have everything figured out. The next season will not require you to strain. It will require you to stay responsive. One step at a time. One yes after another. That is how destiny unfolds. There will be days when you remember this night clearly and days when it feels distant. On the distant days, return to what you know, not what you feel. You know God spoke. You know delay was confronted. You know obedience was chosen. Feelings fluctuate, but truth remains. Anchor yourself in what was decided, not what is shifting. God's tone toward you is not harsh. It is steady. It says, I am with you. It says you are not late. It says, what I promised still stands. The permanence God desires is not permanent delay. It is permanent alignment. Alignment with His voice. Alignment with His timing. Alignment with your calling. Night move you closer to that alignment. As this final part closes, receive this blessing with intention. Type I step forward in the comments if this message has spoken to your spirit. Blessing code 641 is now activated. Let it be a marker of transition, a declaration that you are no longer standing still in delay, but moving forward in trust. Before we end, hear this final truth spoken gently, but firmly. You are not behind. You are not disqualified. You are not overlooked. God does not mark turning points to confuse His children. He marks them to guide them. Tonight was guidance. Tonight was mercy. Tonight was movement. Carry peace with you. Carry awareness with you. Carry expectancy without fear. What was delayed is no longer defining you. What was heavy is being lifted. And what comes next will unfold with clarity, purpose, and grace. As this turning point seals in your spirit, I speak directly to those who feel the nudge to act. When you give, you are not supporting a channel. You are helping God carry this message to souls standing where you once stood. The Lord is saying, what you place in my hands, I multiply with fire and favor. I am inviting you personally into this assignment, because your obedience here echoes further than you can imagine. This is a holy response, not a casual act. Blessing is released over every giver who moves in alignment tonight. Support now through Super Thanks, channel membership, or PayPal. The link is in the description and the QR code is flashing. Act now.